Well, tonight the countdown is on. New York State Assembly Speaker Shelley Silver, he is removed from office. The question is who takes his place. They've got big shoes to fill. Assemblyman Carl Hastie, he seems to be gaining the most support, but could some new allegations over some of his business relationships get in the way of his personal ambitions? Assemblywoman Shelley Mayer, she's kind enough to join the panel tonight to tell us what may come next. And Mitt Romney says he's stepping aside in the race for the White House. That announcement earlier today. Which potential GOP candidate could benefit the most here from the move? Plus, Arizona high school students must pass a U.S. citizenship test, that in order to graduate. Question is it a good or bad idea? But more importantly, before you start giving your opinions, would you pass this test? Well, tonight, we're going to open up the phone lines and let you answer some of the questions. And yes, there could be prizes involved. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we begin this evening in Albany, where the Democratic-run Assembly is reviewing possible candidates to replace embattled Speaker Shelley Silver. Silver, as you all know, facing federal corruption charges after authorities say that he received nearly $4 million in payoffs and kickbacks. Silver, he will be out as Speaker Monday. In fact, he's officially already handed in his resignation a little bit earlier. His successor will be named here come February 10th when the election is, and already some backroom negotiations are going on and alliances drawn as to who may follow in Shelley Silver's footsteps as the next Assembly Speaker. Now, of course, the U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara says he is committed to cleaning up corruption in Albany. Assembly speakers say they were shocked to learn of the charges brought against one Mr. Silver, and the Wall Street Journal reports that a handful of Assembly members were literally out dining at an Applebee's on Sunday when they began to receive tweets about Silver on their cell phones. And I want to bring in our panel right now, led, of course, tonight here by the person who knows a lot of the principles involved and give us an idea where Albany may go next from here. I'm talking, of course, about Assemblywoman Shelley Mayer, Democrat, who represents the great city of Yonkers. Dominic Carter, of course, joins us, political journalist and author. Scott Vanderhoff, attorney, former Rockland County executive many times over, 5 times. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent
have
here.
Some popcorn and listen to
Yes,
Shelley
exactly.
explain what happened.
Well, the list of possible successors is a long one. I'm going to get to those names in a second, but step us back, because while certainly there was a lot of rumor innuendo, when the U.S. Attorney delivered his press conference and when you read through the complaint like the rest of us did, 35 pages, did your jaw drop too?
It did, you know, and I have known Shelley Silver for at least 25 years. I had a wonderful personal relationship with him based on my time working at Beth Israel Medical Center, which is his community hospital, and many years in government. And we worked extremely well, and I had a great deal of respect for him. But I was clear on day one, once I read the complaint, that for the sake of the institution, he needed to step down. I made that personally clear to him. I made it clear within our conference. I felt very strongly, once I read the complaint, that the institution couldn't withstand it. It was not fair to our constituents and to those of us who are elected. He's entitled to the presumption of innocence in his criminal trial, and he should proceed with that. But it's not our responsibility as an institution to sustain leadership that's alleged to have engaged in those kinds of things.
Was he anywhere close to hanging in there? Was he at any point in this, was he close to having enough votes to maintain the speakership?
I don't know about the votes, but I think he believed in his heart of hearts that the residue of goodwill he had with so many members was great enough to sustain him through this. And I think several things he miscalculated. One, as I've said, 42% of the class of 105 Democratic Assembly members is there in the last 5 years. They had some loyalty to him, but they had a different vision. They were enthused about the Assembly. They ran tough races. Some of them ran against the machine candidates. They wanted to participate, and they were not satisfied with the way the Assembly was operating during his leadership. And then they were not going to vote to sustain it. So that was one part. And the second part is even people like me who have great loyalty have greater loyalty to the institution. You know, I was counsel to the Senate Democrats during the coup. And, you know, an institution can be incredibly damaged when you don't make do the hard things and make change. And that's what I said, and I stuck to my guns, and many of my colleagues, ultimately, it was unanimous, the entire conference.
Well, the TikTok of it was, they came up with this idea of this 5-person group from just a practical standpoint. I don't know how that would have ever worked, but it seemed that Silver believed that, hey, you know, give me some time, I'll vindicate myself. Did he ever give for a certain window of time here where he says, if you just stand by me, I'll work this thing out? Give me 2 weeks, give me 1 week. Was that ever discussed as the length of time?
He thought that the 5-person idea would buy him some time. I had a visceral reaction about the 5-person idea, not because the suburbs weren't represented, because I don't think legally you can delegate the powers of the most important person in the legislature to a hand-picked group of 5. We elected him as speaker. You know, shame on us if we made a mistake. Now we're going to elect a new speaker.
Yep.
We did not elect 5 people that the speaker picked to go and negotiate with the governor. It's not a team. I didn't think he could do it, and I really lost my cool about that. And that idea died very quickly. There were a number of us who pushed back, and that was the end of that.
And I want to talk about the institution. I think that's the most important part of this conversation, but let's talk about who would succeed him. And already names emerged, and quickly they're getting winnowed down here. Joe Morelli, he is taking over as the interim Assembly Speaker, and today he announced that he will not be vying, though, for that job for the long term. Assemblyman Keith Wright, as well as Joe Lento, also originally said they wanted the job. Now they're backing out. All of them throwing their support behind Carl Hastie. Hastie, who represents New York's 83rd District. He's gaining momentum and increased support. However, there is, as you'd expect, whenever there's a new name, now some of the stuff in the background comes up here. Daily News reporting that Hastie's name appeared in the Moreland Commission files, stated that he failed to properly account for $25,000 in campaign spending, also claimed nearly $21,000 from the Assembly's travel expense account during the first 6 months of 2014. And he also is accused of paying the mother of his child $2,500 from his campaign treasury here. So you take that, and you take, obviously, I think the headline that he was mentioned in the Moreland Commission. Do you need somebody who's pure as the driven snow here, given the circumstances that they'd be coming into? Is any amount of baggage, including what I mentioned, too much here if the institution is going to get a fresh start?
Well, I think one thing is, you know, like you said, you put your name out there, and there's going to be pile-on of everything they can possibly find. I think they'll be vetting by the Assembly members. They certainly don't want to have another repeat of what we went through. And they're going to ask questions.
People are already dropping out. There's really only a couple names left.
Yes,
he
agreed.
and another Queen Assembly. So you would have thought, before people withdrew their names, there was not only the horse trading going on as to who'd be the one who could get the most votes, but also, I would have assumed they did enough of a background check to say this guy will pass muster.
Well, I think the other thing is, you know, you could throw these things out like you receive these per diems. The Assembly signs off on the per diems. It isn't like you make up a number. It's a process that is approved by someone. So I will wait for him to come before the Assembly Democratic Conference and answer some tough questions. You know, this is not the world's easiest bunch. They're not rollovers, although portrayed to be so. Having sat through 2 days of 10-hour sessions with them, they're going to ask some very hard questions, particularly the new young members who don't have this historical allegiance to the process and the party bosses and all that. They are going to ask hard questions, and I'm hopeful he's going to be able to answer them. I'm supporting him at this point. I've worked with him personally on Yonkers Raceway issues, so I have an actual experience with him, and I'm on the Labor Committee, which he chairs, so I know him and have worked with him. He's not a showboater. He's a very low-key guy. He does
former accountant, right?
Right, does politics well in the Bronx, obviously, but this is a much bigger job.
And it's funny, because I was going to Dominic, who I usually go to, especially for some of the city players. I said, what can you tell me about him? He was like, not much. And the idea that
But that wasn't a plus. That was not a plus. I meant that in a negative way.
Right, but my point is, you usually, I mean, this is a plum gig. People have tried to take down Shelley before, always unsuccessfully. It was surprising, at least to me, that somebody who's a dark horse could emerge this way with so many people who wanted the job in the first place. It is interesting.
Well, the other thing we're sort of the unspoken truth here. The majority of the conference is from New York City. and he was one of the New York City candidates. Joe Morelli, who was unbelievably terrific during the time that we just spent together in Albany. You couldn't have asked for a classier act. Is not from New York City. Historically, for a long time, it's been a New York City job. And I think, there are many New York City members feel like their issues just had to be front and center by the preponderance of numbers. So that was a huge factor. And I wouldn't overplay what the Post or what everybody else has to say. I think there'll be a vetting and there'll be a comfort level, and we'll move from there.
Do we have that clip from Ms. Bahara, guys? This is what he said at the end of that press conference, which I thought certainly has more than a few folks wondering what the next shoe will be to drop.
These charges, in our view, go to the very core of what ails Albany: lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and lack of principle, joined with an overabundance of greed, cronyism, and self-dealing. And so our unfinished fight against public corruption continues. You should stay tuned.
Those final two words here, I imagine not you, but more than a few of your colleagues, maybe some shivers going up the spine. First of all, before I get to where Shelley may or may not, and who knows how he'll pursue his defense in this particular case and what avenues he may choose to take, when he said that, were you nodding along like, I've been saying that for a long time here, it's time somebody cleaned up the place? Or were you worried that he basically has called the complete integrity of the institution that you proudly serve in here, to all the people, and I'm looking at you, Dom, who say there's a whole lot of crooks up there,
Sure is.
that this is only confirming the suspicions.
Well, I'm a reformer. I came out of the reform world. I just helped put together a letter to all of our speaker candidates. It's now signed by 34 of 105 members, predominantly new members, saying, we need changes. Here's a list of questions you need to answer. And Carl is supposed to be meeting with our coalition on Monday night. I have been in the midst of a fight for reform as soon as I knew there was going to be an opportunity for change. I think that you need to clean up Albany. I hope there's not overreach, but I can tell you, going door to door and talking to ordinary voters, there's tremendous suspicion, cynicism about Albany, and until it's cleaned up, we're not going to clean that up.
But stay tuned. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Stay tuned. Right now, Dean Skelos and his office is denying a claim that WNBC broke last night here, but reportedly, at least according to their report, he's under federal investigation, and there's a corruption probe reportedly into his outside income, and it seems to be a common theme here. How many people, and you don't have to give names here, are really worried about the whole outside income aspect? Campaign funds.
Far fewer than you think. Outside income is different than campaign funds. Outside income, there's a significant number, particularly of these newer members, and we're a big portion, who have no other outside income. Outside income traditionally has been with the more senior members from the old days when they had a law firm and all that. It's a different world. Of the new members, I don't know a single one, maybe one or two practice law, who has much of an outside income.
Campaign funds?
Misuse of campaign funds and clarification about what is illegal and what isn't, and I wait to see about some of that. This has been a gray area for years. The law is not clear about what you can use those funds for. I mean, I think Greg Ball is under review. He's not there anymore. He's in Texas. Senator Maziarz is under review. The law is not as clear as it should be. It should be crystal clear, but it isn't that clear. So let's not sort of say everyone who came close. I don't think you should buy clothes with your campaign funds, but I must say the law is not that clear.
You know, and I know, it's an open secret, and I've spoken to former members and even some. If Shelley decides to cooperate and he has to do a complete expungement of everything that he knows of illegality or wrongdoings that he personally either witnessed or was involved with, the feeling is over 28 years, a whole lot of folks here might be getting phone calls from the U.S. Attorney.
Just to cut you off, I make this point. There is a whole new day in Albany. People are not paying attention to it. These new young members in their 20s and 30s are not in this group. There may be some people that are worried about going down, but there's a whole lot of people who want a cleaner Albany and a better Albany, and they are going to rule the roost.
Scott?
Well, I just wanted to compliment the Assemblywoman because,
Nice.
no, I mean, really honestly, to stand up, and she was one of the few, a handful, who pushed, if you read the Wall Street Journal article today, to push to say, no, we're not going to go with Shelley any longer. And you know what? That takes a lot of bravery in any scenario. So I just want to compliment you because you don't wear it on your, on your lapel, but you've shown, I think, in this process that you truly want to create reform, and that's critical.
Easy,
it's
especially,
not easy.
I mean, we've seen how many people
Thank
that have tried to change things in Albany and it doesn't work. But I'm just curious. You can do other things, okay? I know your resume, right? Some of these other people. Has there been a point where you're like, do I really want to be a part of this club, this institution that people think either you're a crook or you're not trying, right? I know that's unfair, and I've been taking the position, like many stories that we do, not even related to politics, that the majority of the good get weighed down by the sins of the few, right? But has there been a point where you're like, I don't need this, where I'm presumed to be part of the rogues gallery here, and look what you presided over. You presided over the whole Pedro Espada coup, and I mean, I almost had to wash my hands every time I told that story, right? I mean, ugh.
It's funny. When you represent, I'm sure you appreciate this, Scott, regular people, they have this tarnished view of Albany. But if you are on the phone with them trying to fix their problem, get more money for the Yonkers schools, make sure people are employed at Yonkers Raceway, fighting for public buses in Yonkers, they give me enormous credit. Even those that disagree strenuously with my politics, if you're engaged and you're not cynical, you can't believe how positive an experience it is. And I let that drive the day. I'm not a cynic. You can't stay in it. If you are, you shouldn't be in it.
You guys want something to cover here?
Yes. Don't be so cynical, you.
No. I just want to say that the Assemblywoman has inside information. Carl Hastie is not a done deal as Speaker, not by far. You can imagine the headline the Post is going to go with tomorrow as far as his girlfriend, who is an aspiring model who describes herself as 5'2", half black, half Japanese. We have to point out in fairness to Mr. Hastie that the $2,500 payment that went to her, it was for her. He didn't just give her the money. It was for her to design a website. She kept part of the money and farmed out the work. It doesn't look good. Doesn't pass the smell test. This is just the beginning. Kathy Nolan, by default, may be resurrected in terms of a possible speaker.
She's the last one standing, right?
I don't know if Mr. Hastie is going to make it.
And anybody in the Moreland report here, if your name's in there right now, that's not.
And his name is in the Moreland report.
You're going to have an interesting time.
I'm gonna have a big week.
Oh, absolutely. All right, when we come back here, a very interesting story, and I want the tables take here. New York Times columnist Charles Below speaking out about his son's altercation with the police on the campus at Yale University. Why he says the cops' race didn't matter. We'll explain that story. And also tonight here, we open up the phone lines. I told you this at the top of the show. Arizona now has a rule that requires high school students to pass a U.S. citizenship exam in order to graduate. Do you think that you could pass the test? Well, before you laugh at the idea, don't be so sure. You might even win something tonight if you get it right. Your toll-free lines open right now. That's right, the mug. Toll-free lines open right now. We'll keep flashing the number throughout. Please join us.